We're turning now to federal politics news, and the Prime Minister has put $3.5 billion on the table to incentivise states to build an extra 200,000 homes starting from next year. Live to Trudy McIntosh. Trudy, we heard from the Prime Minister about this new plan last hour. Just take us through your understanding of how this is going to work.
Well, some of these details, we're still asking a few questions as to exactly how this money is going to be rolled out to the states and territories, but certainly a lot more cash has been stumped up at National Cabinet than we'd been expecting here. The Prime Minister has announced this $3 billion incentive as a part of the National Housing Accord. It's been in place, it's due to start from next year, and it's now going to be turbocharged. I'll show you here the figures. The old target was 1 million homes built over the space of 5 years. That has now increased to 1.2 million. Now, in order to get the states to do this, the Prime Minister's going to spend $3 billion in these incentives. So if they go above their allocation, they'll be able to get access to this extra funding. There's also an additional $500 million to be divvied up amongst states and territories too. And this is part of the Housing Support Program. This is about connecting new developments to essential services. So essentially a grants program that will be across the different states and territories. So in total today, $3.5 billion in new money to the states and territories to get extra homes on the ground in the next 5 years. And this is on top, don't forget, of the $2 billion that was announced in June to get the states to do more when it comes to social and affordable housing. So in the space of a few months, the Prime Minister spent $5.5 billion on housing. I think that goes to show you the pessimism, really, that he'll be able to get the $10 billion housing fund through the Senate. They're going straight to the states and trying to actually get the houses built, as opposed to waiting for the Senate potentially never breaking that deadlock ahead of the election. This was the Prime Minister. He says he's taking a leaf out of the Bob Hawke playbook.
This is borrowed unashamedly from some of the Hawke government reforms where you had incentive payments, such as in national competition policy, so that there's an incentive there that states and territories are aware of, and a reward for delivering on the increased supply that Australia needs.
So, Trudy, what happened for renters, and will it be enough for the Greens?
Well, a broad agreement when it comes to improving rental rights across the country, Ash, but you'd have to say it does lack a real concrete detail. This is up to the states and territories, and when you see the wording of the agreement today, it's pretty clear that it's going to be a patchwork still across the country. We'll show you what the Prime Minister announced today. He says they're going to develop consistent rules in terms of preventing no grounds evictions. They're going to be moving towards limiting rent increases to once a year and phasing in minimum rental standards. But the PM was pressed on this. He got a little bit shirty when he was asked, there's nothing really concrete in what's been announced today. Have a look.
Well, you're wrong. Different states have different jurisdictions with respect, have different rules. Not every state has any restrictions at all. One of the jurisdictions has none. What we're doing is moving towards greater national consistency and making a practical difference.
Now, Trudy, before you go, we don't want to alarm anyone here, but the Defence Minister, Richard Marles, has just delivered a pretty shock announcement on the eve of the ALP National Conference.
Well, he says, Ash, on Twitter that he's resigned as the Minister for Defence, but very quickly in the same sentence he had to say, don't worry, this is just a joke, before the people at Russell implode with this announcement. Have a look at the Deputy Prime Minister here. This is all about Mackenzie Arnold. She's that amazing goalkeeper for the Matildas. She did so well in that penalty shootout, and Richard Marles is ceding the floor to her.
Since Saturday night, I have been inundated with texts and emails. There have been calls from the media. And I want the country to know that I have heard Australia's message. Tonight, our nation faces a grave threat, and it comes from the old enemy. And I realise that I am unable to meet the moment. So it is my solemn duty to announce that this afternoon I'm resigning as Australia's Minister for Defence. And I'm handing my commission to Mackenzie Arnold. As Australia expects, I know that in this hour she will do us proud. And I simply ask one thing. Tomorrow, can you please give me back the keys? Go Matildas.
A great deadpan from Richard Miles there. I'm really interested. What's Mackenzie Arnold's position on AUKUS, Ash? What's her view ahead of the national conference? That's the political journo in me. I'm told Richard Miles, Ash, will be on the plane with the Prime Minister. They're heading to watch this game in person, so he'll get to see Mackenzie Arnold for himself. Hopefully he hasn't put the mockers on her there ahead of tonight's performance.